Hi there, I'm Delara. I spent years working overtime, saving every penny, paying off a condo I thought would be mine one day. But then my parents sold it. Not for an emergency, not even for themselves. They gave the money to my sister, so she could take a healing trip across the US. They called it love, I called it betrayal, and that wasn't the worst part. Because what hurt more was realizing it wasn't a one-time mistake. It was years of being overlooked, dismissed, and used until the day I finally said no. What did I lose? What did I gain? And what happened when I decided to fight back? If you've ever been the strong one in a family that took you for granted, this story might sound way too familiar. Subscribe to hear everything, because silence was never meant to protect them. I didn't speak, not then. I just sat there staring at my mother across the table, like she'd suddenly turned into someone I didn't recognize. My fork hovered midair. Forgotten. Delara? She pressed again, more insistently. The property taxes due Friday. Can you just Venmo your usual part? Her voice was calm, too calm, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just dropped a grenade in the middle of dinner by revealing that they'd set up $1 million account for my sister. Like I wasn't still swallowing the aftertaste of betrayal. I managed a small nod and excused myself, murmuring something about needing air. I grabbed my coat and slipped out the back patio door into the dusk. The salty breeze off the Oregon coast hit me hard, but it didn't clear my head. I leaned against the porch railing and stared at the waves beyond the dunes. The sun was dipping low now, brushing everything in gold, like the world was still soft and good. But inside, I felt afraid. $1 million for Soraya, the woman who hadn't worked in almost 2 years, who once quit a job because she felt energetically misaligned with her manager, who spent most of last year reading tarot cards in the guest bedroom while I was commuting 2 hours daily to my office in Portland. I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. And the worst part? They hadn't even told me in private. It was announced at dinner like it was a toast. Like we were all meant to cheer Soraya on as she gallivanted across the country on a healing journey. How, exactly, do you heal when everything is handed to you on a silver platter? Delara, you okay? It was Dad. His voice was low, tentative. He stepped out, closed the screen door behind him. I'm fine, I lied. He stood beside me for a moment in silence, hands in his pockets. She's been struggling, you know, ever since Ryan left. I didn't respond. Of course, I knew. We'd all been hearing about it for the past 16 months. She needs a reset, he added. And I don't? I turned toward him. I don't need a break or stability or acknowledgement for everything I've been doing. He looked away, toward the waves. You've always been strong, honey. You don't fall apart like she does. I let out a dry laugh. That's the problem, Dad. You reward the falling apart and punish the holding it together. He didn't reply. After a moment, he gave my arm a half-hearted pat and went back inside. I stayed out a little longer. The wind was colder now, and I wrapped my coat tighter around me. By the time I walked back into the house, dessert was being served. Soraya was showing off her planned road trip route to our cousins on her phone. New Mexico, Sedona, Boulder, all the energy vortex hot spots. She looked radiant, giddy. I just feel like the universe is opening for me, she said with a dreamy smile. I bit my tongue so hard I could taste blood. I helped clear the plates, ignoring everyone's chatter, and quietly made my way upstairs to the guest room. Later that night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me. It cast slow, rhythmic shadows on the wall like a metronome, counting down to a decision I hadn't made yet. They sold the condo, my condo, the one I'd been paying off for years. I'd funneled my savings into it. Deferred promotions, skipped vacations. I paid for maintenance, for WA fees, for the new roof last spring. I thought it was for our family's future. Turns out it was just a piggy bank for Soraya's spiritual enlightenment. I pulled my phone off the nightstand and opened the Venmo app. The property tax reminder still sat unread. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the keyboard. And then I closed the app. For the first time in years, I chose silence. The drive back to Portland was so quiet it felt like the car itself was holding its breath. No music, no podcast, just the low hum of tires on the road and the occasional flicker of my dashboard light, warning me that I was nearly out of gas. Fitting. I'd spent everything, time, money, energy, trying to build something stable. And now here I was, drained in every way. By the time I reached my apartment, the sky had faded to a slate gray, and the air held that particular stillness that only came before a storm. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, and walked straight to my desk. I didn't bother turning on the overhead light. The glow from my laptop screen was enough. I opened my personal budget tracker. The one I kept meticulously updated. There it was, row after row of bills tied to the condo, utilities, quarterly WA dues. The water heater I paid $2,300 to replace last spring without asking anyone for a dime. I'd kept every receipt, every email, every invoice, not because I was petty, but because that's what responsible people did. That's what I'd been taught by the very people who just sold the place out from under me. I scrolled back through the months and stopped at a note I'd added last year. Asked Mom for help with car repair. Response: we can't afford that right now. Right, but they could afford to bankroll a cross-country healing journey for my sister. I closed the file and leaned back in my chair. My apartment was quiet, too quiet, but it had always been like that. No one calling to check in. No spontaneous family visits. I was doing well, so I didn't need them. That's how it worked in our family. If you weren't visibly falling apart, you didn't count. I reached for the mug on my desk, only to realize it was empty. On the way to the kitchen, I passed the framed picture on my hallway shelf. A rare photo of Soraya and me at a beach trip years ago. She was barefoot, smiling, sun-kissed and wild. I was half out of frame, holding the camera, of course. That night, as I curled up on the couch with a blanket and opened an old email thread from when I was 26, memories began to resurface. I had just lost a freelance gig unexpectedly and was 2 weeks behind on rent. I remembered the lump in my throat as I called Mom, asking if she could help cover me, just this once. Her voice had been brisk. You're tough. You'll get through it. And I did. I picked up 2 part-time jobs, teaching workshops at a community center and writing ad copy at night for local businesses. I was exhausted, borderline broke, but I pushed through. That same year, Soraya moved back into our parents' house after another breakup. She didn't work. She didn't cook. She needs space to heal. Mom had said, healing, apparently, came with yoga classes, acai bowls, and binge-watching documentaries about the divine feminine. I sighed and rubbed my temples. The ache behind my eyes wasn't from the screen. It was from years of being invisible. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm and made coffee with muscle memory. As I waited for it to brew, I logged into my bank account, checking if the shared utility bill from the condo had finally been unlinked. It hadn't. I was still auto-paying for trash collection on a property I didn't own. My breath caught. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the erasure. They hadn't just taken the condo. They had rewritten history, stripped away my role in building it, as if I had never mattered. I opened our family's shared folder on Google Drive, clicked through the receipts, deed copies, maintenance logs. Then I started screenshotting. Quiet, methodical, cold. That evening while reheating leftovers for dinner, my phone buzzed. Dad, hey, don't forget, property tax due this Friday. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed out a reply. Simple and final. I won't be contributing anymore. I put the phone down and took a deep breath. Not out of anger, but release. No reply came. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even a blue dot under a red receipt to confirm someone had bothered to see what I wrote. The silence settled like dust in an old room. Undisturbed. Ignored. I kept glancing at my phone through the day, expecting something. A passive-aggressive text from Mom. A half-hearted, "What's going on?" from Dad. But nothing. Just the void. By mid-afternoon, I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe declining to pay a tax bill on a house I didn't own anymore was selfish. I questioned whether I should have just kept the peace. It would have been easier. Quieter. That inner noise only lasted until late evening, when an ache deep in my chest bloomed into something older than this condo nonsense. Something that had been sitting in the background of my life for years. I let myself feel it. Just for a second. And then the memories came flooding in. The first one hit like a chill. College. I was 19, living alone in a damp, off-campus apartment with bad heating and worse plumbing. I'd gotten sick. Really sick. Fever over 103. Shaking so badly I could barely stand. I called my mom, voice hoarse, barely able to get the words out. Her reply, "Honey, I wish I could come, but Soraya's having one of her panic spells again. She really needs me tonight." I hung up, shivering, and dragged myself to the campus clinic by bus. I never forgot that feeling of being replaceable, of my emergency being less urgent because it didn't look dramatic enough. Years later, when I turned 28, I waited all day for a phone call that never came. Not from Mom, not from Dad, not even from Soraya. It was a Saturday. I spent the evening alone, with a microwave dinner and a sad candle on my kitchen table. A week later, Soraya posted a lengthy Instagram caption about how some family relationships are just too emotionally draining to maintain. She tagged our cousin in the post. Not me. Then there was the barbecue at Aunt Brianna's house the summer I got my promotion. I had barely walked in when I overheard her whisper to Uncle Ildon, "Delara's always been kind of cold. Hasn't she?" Her voice was hushed, but I heard it. I always did. I just learned to pretend I didn't. It's not that they hated me. They just didn't know me. Or worse, they'd already decided who I was and never bothered to update the story. The strong one, the stable one, the sister who never needed help, the daughter who just handled things. But I hadn't felt strong in a long time. I'd felt invisible. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't scream or call anyone. Instead, I opened a blank document on my computer and began to type. Not a message, not a letter, just truths, fragments, my side of things, the part no one had ever asked about. Who was I when no one was looking? Who was I when I wasn't trying to make everything easier for everyone else? I wrote until my eyes ached, until my fingers slowed, until the feelings started to take shape in words I could hold. Then I made a folder on my desktop, the things they forgot. It wasn't for vengeance. It wasn't even for clarity. It was for me, a container to hold the parts of my story that had been rewritten or erased by everyone else. I uploaded old screenshots, messages that once hurt, but now just confirmed what I already knew. I saved photos, emails, bits and pieces of all the ways I'd been asked to be smaller so Soraya could be big enough to feel loved. They didn't remember the moments I did the heavy lifting. But I did, and now I had proof. Until someone else decided to rewrite the story again. It was around 10 the next morning, just as I was sipping cold coffee and cleaning up the tabs I'd left open the night before. My phone buzzed. A message from a coworker I barely talked to. "Hey, just checking in. You okay? Saw something kind of weird online." I didn't have the energy to guess. I clicked the link she'd sent. It led to Soraya's Instagram. The first thing I saw was her face. Sun-kissed, radiant, windswept curls backlit by a desert sky. A classic Soraya shot, framed for maximum drama. Behind her, red rock cliffs stretched into forever. The caption read, "Some people heal, others hate. I'm choosing to rise." Beneath the post were over 200 likes and nearly 60 comments. "So proud of you. You're breaking generational cycles. Family is what you make it." And there, right in the middle, my mom had commented, "You've always been the light. Darling, let no one dim that." My hand froze on the screen. It wasn't the photo. It wasn't even the caption. Not entirely. It was the timing, the implication, the fact that none of them had replied to my message. Yet here they were applauding her growth, cheering her on for being the very victim I was quietly trying to stop being. I set the phone down. But the room didn't stop spinning. It was surreal watching my own family applaud a public narrative that erased me entirely. That's when it hit me. I hadn't just been excluded. I was being rewritten. Later that afternoon, while doing laundry, another memory pushed its way to the surface. Like a weed I couldn't pull. Last year, during a family barbecue, Soraya had introduced her then boyfriend to everyone. At one point he asked jokingly, "So, what's your sister like?" She laughed and said, "Delara? Oh, she's the serious one. Probably spreadsheets her emotions." The table roared with laughter. Even Dad chuckled. I smiled too, tight-lipped, polite, but inside something curled and shriveled. It had sounded like a joke. But it wasn't, not really. It was the kind of line that becomes a label, then a lens. And once people see you through that lens, they stop looking for anything else. The post, the comment, the years of being dismissed and diminished. Each one slotted into place like puzzle pieces I didn't want to own. But had no choice but to see clearly. Now, by the time evening came, I was done scrolling. I deleted the app from my phone and powered it off. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much to keep reading lies about who I was from the people who were supposed to know me best. I walked to my desk. The folder, the things they forgot, was still open. I clicked through the screenshots. The voice memos I'd saved over the years. They weren't revenge. They were evidence. Not for a court. For me. And then, for the first time in this entire ordeal, I began to type with intention. Not a rant. Not a sob story. A line in the sand. The first draft was messy, filled with the kind of rage I'd never let anyone see. The second one was clearer, but too soft. It was the third version I kept. It was addressed to only one person, my mother. It read, "You may not hear me, but I'm done staying silent. You raised me to be the responsible one. The calm one. The one who doesn't make scenes. But this, what you're doing now, is a scene. And if you keep using my quiet as permission to rewrite me, I will respond loudly. I hit send without hesitating. The silence I'd once used as protection now burned like gasoline. 2 days passed. Then her name lit up on my screen. Soraya. Can we talk? Not to argue. Just as sisters. I stared at the message for a long minute. I almost didn't respond. But some part of me, maybe curiosity, maybe hope, maybe exhaustion, typed back, fine. Meet me at Briar and Vine at 11 tomorrow. The next morning, Portland was grayer than usual. A steady drizzle misted over my windshield as I pulled into the coffee shop's tight parking lot. I got there early and chose a booth in the far corner, tucked under a faded mural of wildflowers. The smell of espresso and old wood surrounded me, comforting in its familiarity. Soraya walked in 10 minutes late, of course. Flowing beige cardigan, oversized sunglasses, a chai latte already in her hand. She looked like someone who hadn't missed a night of sleep in weeks. Peaceful, curated, composed. I hated how effortless she made it all seem. She slid into the booth across from me and pulled off her glasses. Hey, she said gently, I'm glad you came. I didn't return the greeting. Just waited. I'm not here to fight. She went on, I think we've misunderstood each other. I feel like communication is getting lost between us. Do you think it was okay what happened with the condo? I asked, cutting through the fog of niceties. She blinked, taken aback by the directness. I never asked for that money. Delara, I didn't know they sold it behind your back. Mom and Dad just wanted to support me. So they drained the thing I spent 6 years building? I replied, to help you find your chakras? Soraya's expression tightened. I'm sorry you feel hurt. I really am, but this wasn't about taking anything from you. It's about balance. Balance? I repeated. You think this was balance? She nodded. You've always had your life together. I've always been the one who struggled. They were just trying to even things out. That's not malicious. I leaned forward, voice low but sharp. No, Soraya, you're not struggling. You're just really good at making your chaos everyone else's job. Her lips parted, a flicker of something flaring behind her eyes. Then she leaned back, a bitter smile curling. Maybe you just don't know how to love unconditionally. It didn't sting like I expected. It just clarified everything. There it is, I murmured. The magic sentence. The emotional guilt grenade. The server came by with a refill, which neither of us touched. We sat in silence for a beat, both of us knowing we'd passed some invisible line. I looked out the window, rain streaking the glass, and for a second, I remembered something from a year ago. We were standing in the same condo kitchen, before it was ever listed. When I'd brought up the idea of selling, I was tired, burned out from being the only one paying into it. Dad had said, this house has been part of our family tradition. Some things matter more than money. But when Soraya needed funds for her spiritual sabbatical, suddenly tradition became negotiable. I sipped my coffee, now cold. You know what I've realized? I said, I was never part of the story. Just part of the setting. Like a couch or lamp. Supportive, functional, but not human. Soraya didn't respond. She just slipped her sunglasses back on. As she stood, she adjusted her cardigan and said softly, I hope you find peace. I rose from my seat calmly. Evenly. Peace is easy when you stop expecting fairness from people who never practiced it. We left the shop in opposite directions. By the time I stepped into my apartment, the overcast Portland sky had deepened to charcoal gray. The drizzle that misted my windshield on the way home had turned into steady rain, painting streaks against the living room windows. I didn't bother changing out of my clothes. I kicked off my boots, hung my coat on the back of a chair, and walked straight to my desk. I knew exactly what I was going to do. First, I opened the folder I'd been quietly building, labeled Condo Finances. Inside were scanned invoices, PDFs of utility statements, emails with maintenance companies, screenshots of Venmo transfers from the last 5 years. I split the screen and opened a spreadsheet next to it. Column A description, column B date, column C amount. It wasn't rage driving me now. It was something colder, focused, the kind of resolve that creeps in once grief exhausts itself. Line by line, I worked my way through the records. $183. February electric bill, $2.326. Replacement water heater, $74.95. Gutter cleaning I scheduled after a storm, $511. Fence repair after Soraya's dog chewed through it, $92. Plumber unclogging the drain after her holistic herbs blocked it, $4.200. Roof patching after mold damage. 5 years of payments. Quiet contributions. Every one of them mine. No co-signers. No thank yous. No shared burden. When I totaled the last column, the number flashed back at me like a final insult. $61.408.73. I sat there for a moment, staring at it. Then I took a breath and opened my email. Subject: Request for financial clarification regarding joint property contributions. 2. Malin.n@gmail.com. Doran.m@gmail.com. CC. Myself. I wrote, "Hi Mom and Dad." Attached is a detailed breakdown of my financial contributions to the Newport property from 2017 to 2023. These include, but are not limited to, WA fees, utility bills, maintenance costs, and capital improvements. Please respond with a formal explanation of how proceeds from the property sale were distributed and whether I will receive any reimbursement based on these contributions. I will not be financially participating in any family-related property or support arrangements until this matter is fully addressed in writing. I attached the spreadsheet in every single scanned document. Then I signed off with something new. This address is no longer available for emotional or financial deposits. And I hit send. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel helpless. I felt clean. The next morning, I poured coffee and sat by the window, watching the rain create tiny explosions in the puddles below. My inbox remained empty. No replies. No acknowledgements. Just silence again. Until just after noon, I received a text from Jamie, a friend who worked at a local bank branch. She'd helped me open a new account last year when I was restructuring my finances. Her message was simple: "Hey, you might want to check if your old shared utilities account is still active." Something weird flagged our system this week. My chest tightened. I hadn't used that account in months. I'd switched everything over when I moved out. Or so I thought. I opened the app and logged in. Sure enough, the account had been reactivated 5 weeks ago. Only one payment had gone through since. A $321 water bill charged to my routing info for a house I didn't even legally own anymore. I scrolled further. 2 more automatic drafts had been attempted, but declined due to insufficient funds. I hadn't noticed, because I'd stopped monitoring the old account. My hands were shaking now. Digging deeper into the activity log, I saw the change. The name listed on the reactivation, my mother's. Same last name, different phone number. She'd used my old login permissions to switch the payment method back under my name without my consent. They'd taken from me again. Quietly, strategically, while pretending nothing had happened. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I opened a new tab and began drafting a formal fraud claim. Then I contacted Jamie and asked for a record of the change log to keep for my files. She agreed to help. I closed the banking app and reopened my email. In my signature block, I typed one final sentence beneath my name: "This address is no longer available for emotional or financial deposits." Then I forwarded that very email to my parents again. Same subject, same attachment, just a reminder. Let them see it. Let them feel the weight of it. Let them sit with the discomfort they'd ignored for so long. That evening, I went for a walk without my phone. The drizzle had stopped, but the sky was still heavy. I didn't wear headphones. I wanted the quiet, the clarity, the knowledge that I'd said what needed saying. Finally, without apology. And maybe they wouldn't reply. Maybe they'd sit in their comfortable version of the story forever. But mine had changed, and this time, I was the one writing it. The silence didn't last. Late the next evening, just as I was brushing my teeth before bed, my phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. A voicemail. "Mom." I paused, then pressed play with a trembling thumb. Her voice cracked through the speaker, thick with sobs. "This family's falling apart. Delara, I don't even recognize you anymore. Since when did you start keeping score like this? It's like you're trying to punish us. I raised you to be generous, to forgive, not this." She sniffled. "We gave you everything, and you're throwing it away. Over what? Money? Resentment? You used to be kind." The message ended with a whimper. "I don't know how to fix this if you won't even try." Before I could sit with the sting of it, my phone lit up again. This time, Dad. I didn't answer, but the voicemail came seconds later. His tone was colder, measured. "Look, whatever this is, you're blowing it out of proportion. We've all had to make compromises. This isn't betrayal, it's life. Grow up." I put the phone down. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stared at my reflection in the mirror, tired eyes, clenched jaw, heart pounding behind a mask of calm. They hadn't called when I was hurting. They hadn't replied to my breakdown of condo expenses. But now that I'd stopped being silent, I was the threat. And then came the final blow. 2 mornings later, I was sipping coffee on the couch when a notification lit up my screen. Soraya had posted again. Curiosity got the better of me. I tapped. It was a photo from some cliffside in New Mexico. Her eyes closed, arms stretched to the sky, light pouring behind her like a halo. The caption: healing isn't easy when you're accused of stealing your own worth. Some people won't understand your journey. And that's okay. I scrolled through the comments. Your growth is inspiring. People who hate your light just want to dim it. You've survived so much. Keep shining. Then I saw it. Wow. Even your sister? That's cold. The commenter's name made my stomach twist. It was someone from high school. A girl who once borrowed my notes and never returned them. She believed Soraya's version. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't a family rift anymore. It was a campaign. My silence hadn't protected me. It had only made room for a louder lie. I opened Instagram, finger hovering over the post button. I almost wrote something, some searing truth. A timeline of receipts. But I deleted it. Instead I posted a photo. Simple, quiet, an old brass key on top of a folded deed. The caption: letting go. Not for attention, but for peace. No hashtags, no tags, just truth. It got no likes at first. No comments, no rush of support. But an hour later, a DM appeared. It was from my cousin Maya. We hadn't spoken in years. I never knew all this. You deserve better. I'm so sorry. Just that. It felt like someone finally saw me. Not the version mom defended. Not the projection Soraya curated. Just me. That night I turned off my phone early and lit a candle in the kitchen window. I let the silence return. But this time it wasn't hollow. I had a truth they couldn't edit. A life they didn't get to narrate anymore. Around midnight, just as I was rinsing dishes, my laptop pinged with a new message request. It was from someone I didn't know. The name didn't ring a bell. Hey, I saw your sister's post. I'm a journalist. Can we talk? I didn't reply to the journalist. But the thought of her message lingered long after midnight. It sat in my chest like a question I didn't want to answer. What happens when your silence has been weaponized for too long? Do you take your story back? Or let someone else tell it? The next morning, I opened my laptop and began searching for a lawyer. Just a consultation, I told myself. A conversation, not a declaration of war. I booked a virtual call with a real estate attorney named Thomas Lynch. 40 minutes later, I sat on my couch. Legs crossed, laptop propped on a pillow. He greeted me politely, business casual from the waist up. Probably wearing sweatpants underneath his blazer. I laid everything out, 5 years of bills. My spreadsheet of expenses, copies of texts, photos of receipts, a timeline of condo upkeep. I kept my voice level. Professional, detached even, just facts. When I finished, he leaned back slightly and exhaled. Delara, he said carefully, this is detailed work. And you're right, it's not nothing. But here's the legal truth, unless your name was on the title. Or formal agreements were drawn up. You're what we call an informal contributor. Legally generous, but unprotected. The words struck hard. I'd known it deep down. But hearing them from a lawyer so final, so matter of fact, was like being kicked in the ribs after you already got the wind knocked out. You were trying to build equity. He continued, but all you built was history. And unfortunately, courts don't always honor that. After the call, I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I went quiet. And in that quiet, memory swept in. The cracked tiles in the condo kitchen. Cracks caused by Soraya's insistence on dragging furniture instead of lifting it. I paid for the repair. The time she missed 2 months of WA fees while she was figuring things out in Bali. I covered those too, because mom said we had to keep the peace. Then there was the broken AC. A summer party that turned into a sauna because Soraya wanted to test the limits of the thermostat. The unit gave out, and I replaced it alone. For years, I played the fixer, the quiet cleaner, the sister who showed up with a checkbook and a tight smile. I was done playing that part. That afternoon, I sat at my desk and drafted a letter. Not a text, not an email, a registered, printed, physically mailed letter. I addressed it to my parents. Both by name. I listed every contribution I'd made toward the condo. Line by line, invoice by invoice. I included screenshots of every charge I'd taken on. Quietly, I summarized every moment my silence had been exploited in the name of family. Then I wrote this. This letter is not a request. It is a boundary. As of today, I am formally and permanently disassociating from all financial matters tied to the Newport property. I will not contribute further. I do not seek reimbursement. But I will not be complicit in a family system that rewards dishonesty and penalizes accountability. Let this also serve as notice. I am no longer financing silence. I signed it, sealed it, and walked it to the post office myself. The sun had broken through the clouds by then, casting light on the sidewalk in streaks between tree shadows. I dropped the envelope into the metal mailbox and stood there for a beat. Not because I was uncertain. Because I wanted to remember the moment I finally chose me. That weekend, it rained again. Portland's favorite ritual. I spent Saturday decluttering my apartment, old papers, books I no longer read, a few trinkets that held energy I didn't want anymore. It was a different kind of cleansing. Not for show, for soul. Sunday morning, I was making tea when the knock came. 3 gentle taps. Hesitant, I peeked through the peephole. And my breath caught. It was Soraya. She stood on the porch, hair damp from drizzle, clutching a small cardboard box against her chest like it was fragile. I opened the door but didn't say a word. She didn't step forward, just held the box out toward me. "It's yours," she said, voice low. "I don't want to carry it anymore." I looked down. Taped shut. No label, no context. But I didn't need one. I already knew. She handed me the box. Her eyes red-rimmed but dry. "I think you should read what's inside," Soraya said softly, like she hadn't rehearsed the line at all. I took it wordlessly. She didn't stay, didn't try to come in. Just turned and walked away. Rain spitting lightly over her shoulders as she disappeared down the sidewalk. I closed the door behind her and carried the box to my coffee table. It was heavier than it looked. Inside there were photos, dozens of them, the 2 of us as kids, running across the beach at Seaside, Oregon, birthday hats askew, ice cream smeared across our cheeks, a Polaroid of us wrapped in towels, squinting into the sun, arms looped over each other, like nothing could separate us. And then a letter, folded twice, tucked between a photo album and an old glitter glue card I'd made for her 10th birthday. Her handwriting was loopy, uncertain, almost like she didn't want to commit to her own words. "I didn't know how to be your sister when you didn't need saving." It read, "I thought you didn't need anyone at all. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. For the condo, for letting mom and dad make you invisible, for acting like the only kind of pain that mattered was mine." That was it. No plea for a response. No excuses. No manipulative hook. Just a fragile slice of truth. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief either. But something inside me did loosen just a bit. The following week I moved into my new studio apartment, on the other side of Portland. It was nothing fancy. 1 big room, small kitchen, no dishwasher, but it had morning light that poured in through east-facing windows. And floors that creaked in a way that felt like honesty. I left most of the old condo furniture behind. I bought a small writing desk and a set of new linens. Yellow, not blue. For once, I framed a single photo of myself at the beach when I was 9, wind blowing my hair sideways. Eyes fierce and unbothered. I journaled daily again. Not about them. About me. It felt strange at first. Writing without an audience in mind. Just documenting. Witnessing myself. Healing didn't arrive like a parade. It crept in quietly through small routines. Watering a plant. Catching the light just right on my wall. Saying no without over-explaining. I even started cooking again. For myself. Not for show. One evening, after a warm bowl of lentil soup and an old movie playing in the background, I sat down to write a letter I never intended to send. It was addressed to my parents. "Dear Mom and Dad," I began. "Thank you for what you did give me, structure, education, a sense of humor I didn't appreciate until adulthood. I know you didn't mean to raise us unevenly. I know you probably did the best you could with what you understood at the time. And still, it wasn't enough. You taught me how to give, but never how to receive. You taught me to clean up, but never how to be cared for. I don't hate you. I'm just done carrying the debt of being the strong one." I paused for a long time before finishing. Some wounds don't scar, they stay open, but I no longer live inside them. I folded the letter and slipped it into a drawer with no address written on the envelope. Closure doesn't always look like a grand finale. Sometimes it's choosing not to reopen the door. A few mornings later, I woke before the alarm. The sky outside was starting to tint lavender. I pulled on a sweatshirt, slipped into sandals, and grabbed a thermos of tea. I walked 3 blocks to the waterfront, a place I hadn't visited in years. It was quiet there, just a couple of joggers and the sound of the river tugging gently against the docks. I found a smooth stone near the shore, carried it in my palm like a worry. No ritual, no symbolism, just a rock. I tossed it into the water. It skipped once, then sank without ceremony. The ripple it left behind was soft, almost invisible, but I saw it. The light caught the surface just as I turned to go, brushing gold across the tops of waves. I stood still for a moment, letting it warm my face. And I smiled just a little. They took a home from me, but I took my life back. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people who raised you, trusted you, and told you that family means everything, until it no longer included you. But here's what I learned. Being the strong one doesn't mean staying silent. It means knowing when to walk away and choosing peace over permission. So now I'm asking you, have you ever had to set a boundary that cost you a family tie? What did you lose and what did you finally gain? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone, and if stories like this speak to you, don't forget to hit subscribe. There's more coming, and you won't want to miss them.